When are we going to launch that boat? Finally, that is the question.
Hi, we are Ben and Fee, and almost 3 years ago we bought a rotten sinking boat. Since then, we have been rebuilding her from the keel up, with the help of an amazing team of legends. I mean, shipwrights. We got really far, considering how our boat looked when we first saw her. But are we ready to launch? That's what we'll be addressing in today's episode.
When are we finally going to launch that boat? That is the question.
That's true. A few weeks ago, we painted Yabá, and then we got flooded with messages and emails asking, when are we gonna launch? Because now that we painted, it's ready to go to the water, right? Wrong.
We know for sure we want to launch the boat before she is completely ready.
Yeah, we're really excited to go to the water, start a bit of the sailing life, even though that means that we have to sail a bit and still work on the boat a bit, but at least we want to be out there. We decided we're not waiting for the boat to be 100% ready before splashing, but there are a couple of things that there's no escape. We have to do them. In November this year, we're gonna complete 3 years of rebuilding Yabá. And the truth is, we really don't want that to happen.
If anyone asks us, how long did it take you to build your boat? What are you gonna answer?
Not even 3 years.
Like, not even 3 years, so we can't let that happen, guys.
For us to be able to go to the water in November before our 3rd year anniversary, we have to do some stuff, but we don't have to do everything. The boat doesn't need to be 100% ready. But there's some stuff that we really cannot escape from. And that stuff, just this 4 pages list that we have over here.
And that's what we're gonna go over now with you guys. Don't worry, we're not just gonna name every item on the list. We are gonna show you specifically the cool things that have to be done before launching.
Exactly. So let's get over them.
Let's go. We are here under the boat, starboard bow, and you can see that 3 things. Well, you can see probably that one very obvious thing has to happen over here, and that is the anti-fouling. Here, all this epoxy primer paint is going to be lightly sanded down close before launching, and we are going to apply the anti-fouling under here as well. 2 more things that are less obvious. First one being that there is one line of caulking. Let me get you closer. There's one line that hasn't been caulked yet. The reason for that is what they say, and the way they do it here is, 1, if water does come in while we don't have bilge pumps, it can run out of this lowest point in the boat. Secondly, moving Yabá from these supports onto the crib is going to use a lot of wedges, jacks, hammering, and shifting the weight on the keel, which doesn't happen on the water. So the weight on the keel is going to be moved from left to right, back to forwards. So to prevent any of this caulking in specifically from opening again, that caulking is going to be done on the crib. So once the boat's been moved onto the crib, this is going to be caulked. The seam's going to be filled with caulking compound, and then followed with the primers and the anti-fouling. For the 3rd and final thing that has to be done to the keel, I am moving over to the boat here next to us. Yabá, you can see over there in the back, is over here. You can see there is a sacrificial keel. This is the fixed keel that we have, and under it we're going to have a 5 centimeter thick piece of wood that's going to be fastened onto the bottom, which is going to be the first thing that, if ever tornado worms get through the anti-fouling or the epoxy primer, they attack or they eat up the sacrificial keel before getting to the real keel, which means that whenever we have to lift the boat because of tornado worms, we mainly just have to replace this lowest sacrificial keel instead of the entire keel like we did before. This is another boat next to us, and over here you can really see how the sacrificial keel is in place over there. Also, in this lift of this boat this time, only a part of it has been replaced, and that's why it's a really good thing to have. This boat over here does have a hydraulic rudder, but you can get the idea of what we want to do. We need to adjust our keel a bit so the propeller can spin. Also, they've got some big metal plates all around to strengthen this area in case they hit ground, or worst case scenario, just to make this strengthen up a bit. Mateus, the guy working on our propeller, has also suggested for us to add some smaller blades, so with the spinning of the propeller, the blades will cut any rope that gets stuck in it. Also, here they have a very small little system to prevent any ropes from getting stuck in the rudder.
Painting wise, besides the anti-fouling, we know that the final color is already ready, but almost ready, because we're still missing painting the bowsprit and the transom, and also upstairs the housing area, the superstructure, is still not painted because we don't know if we want to use the same paint as the hull or a different color. So if you have an opinion on that, Please let us know so you can help us decide that.
We cannot go anywhere without being able to steer our rudder, and everything from the rudder up to the steering wheel is still missing. We have decided to go for pulleys and stainless steel wires to steer this boat. All we need to do now is connect that stainless steel wire to a chain to the helm, bring it through pulleys all the way to the transom, and drill 2 holes into the transom, which are gonna then let those wires go through via pulleys onto the rudder itself. Hopefully that will be sufficient to already get the boat steering, and then later we can work on any of the other systems like autopilots. If we want to change to hydraulic, who knows? For now, this is what it's going to be. And being able to steer the boat, of course, means removing these wires and this rope and these clamps and actually attaching the steering wheel.
Something we really like about our boat is our steering wheel. It looks super nice, it feels super nice, and we really like this piece.
I'll put them back for now.
One of the jobs that really cannot be done once we're in the water is adding the through holes to our hull. So we need to make a couple of holes that will be for the inlet and outlet of each toilet, so 2 and 2, then the engine, and I think that's it. Maybe a saltwater pump that we can pump with our feet for the sink. We're gonna think about that one, but we want to have as little as possible. Besides all the through holes, our hull still needs to have all the anodes installed because they will keep the through holes safe and healthy.
We want to work on everything sails and running rigging related in the water, or on the water preferably, which does mean that we are going to have to get this engine sorted to even have the slightest chance of leaving this big shipping canal. The main things missing on this engine is the saltwater system. We do not have a through hull yet, which is going to be the saltwater inlet to the pump to refrigerate the engine. Another thing we should work on is this big turbo over here. We want to put a casing over the top of it, so if anyone does come down or want to hold on to something, you do not hold onto the turbo because that gets quite hot. Also, there is a filter needed on the other side to prevent any dirt from getting sucked in. Other than that, this is our exhaust for now, and it has to go all the way there. So yes, before we head into the water, the exhaust system is another thing on our list, with the safety box in between and a big fat hole in the transom as the exhaust escape hole through transom. You might know we got quite far with the prop shaft. All we need to do now is connect the prop shaft to the gearbox with the cardan, and also add a bearing here. We also have to attach a plate here, which is going to prevent the propulsion of the propeller and the shaft to push the engine forward. So this huge slab chunk of floor timber, let's call it, is going to hold the weight or the propulsion of the propeller. We only have one diesel tank installed, and that is this one over here, and that, in my opinion, will not do. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 diesel tanks over there for now. They're about 220 liters each. Each of them will be connected all together and then connected to the engine itself. Over here we have a big 24-volt alternator, which has to be connected to the batteries with an alternator controller between here and the batteries to prevent this from damaging the batteries. A very important thing to have on this boat before even thinking of using the engine also is a bunch of spare belts. I'm very happy and very impressed with Elio and MP's idea of having one belt size on the entire engine, which means we only need one spare belt size, and we can just buy 4 or 5 and place them wherever we want afterwards. We're trying to do everything safe, especially as the first test of our boat is heading out a huge busy shipping canal with fishing boats, tourist boats, container ships, and so on. So before we even think about heading out, we are going to run a bunch of last checks on this engine, making sure the diesel is clean, making sure all the sensors work, making sure we can read the sensors up on top, and so on. Just in case you're wondering, yes, these diesel tanks are going to be very securely fastened into place. We would like to work on most of our sailing system and running rigging on the water. However, standing rigging is another story. We want at least the masts to be standing by themselves without any issue, and that involves the shrouds and the stays. Each mast has 4 shrouds, so 2 on each side, excluding the stays of course. The foremast has 2 forestays. There is a stay, I think it's called, connecting the 2 masts on top, and the boat also has 1 backstay. Each of the shrouds is connected on this. This is this boat's chain plates. Very simply, goes down the side here. This gets fastened onto the rail, and these get fastened onto the top plank of the hull. We can add more holes if we want to. Either way, this goes down here and needs a little ring to be fastened onto the shroud. Now that the hull is painted and the rail, bulwark and stanchions are varnished, I can now apply this very easily. I'm going to say easy now, but it's definitely not going to be easy. By drilling holes, filling the holes with epoxy resin and screwing this in with Sikaflex in between. Why did I say I want to work on the shrouds before heading into the water and not the stays? First, let me define what I understand with shrouds and stays. Shrouds go down the side of the boat and stays are forwards and aft, so forestay, backstay and so on. Each of our masts has 4 shrouds, so 4 steel wires in a square holding each mast up. So each direction that the mast will be pulled, it will have support. Main mast will have 4 and foremast will have 4 shrouds. Once those shrouds are done, the mast will stay up by themselves. When I'm in the water, I can then take my time to remove 1 stay at a time. For example, there are 2 forestays on the foremast, one forestay on the main mast and 1 backstay on the main mast. As those 4 shrouds are going to be holding the mast up anyway, I can remove, for example, this one, which is now completely loose, take the furling system apart, check all the steel wiring and place it again. The mast shouldn't fall over or will still be strong. Once this one's back in place, I can replace the backstay with a rope, of course, remove the backstay, see if everything's good, loosen it up there, make sure everything under the bracket is right, and then place that backstay again. And same with the 2 forestays. There are a few more stays that this boat has that I don't think is very common on regular sailing boats, and that is that our bowsprit is also being held in place. If you look at the shape of our boat, we will have a stay going from the close to where the propeller is up to the platform, from the platform to the tip of the mast. From the tip of the main mast, it will go to the tip of the foremast, and from the tip of the foremast, we will have the forestay going to the tip of the bowsprit. That, of course, is still missing some stays, and they are the ones that will keep the boat from ripping the bowsprit upwards. So from the bowsprit downwards, we will have 2 stays going down to the stem of the boat, and to prevent the bowsprit from moving left to right, we will have 2 stays on each side running to the cathead. Those I will try and get done before heading into the water. Of course, the forestay under the bowsprit is necessary, the side ones not so much.
Here is where we chose to have our electric panel. We are still just working on planning it. So this is all we have so far electric wise, which is just planning and doing loads of research to see how to do it. Then soon we can make this area here filled with equipment so our boat can have electricity. But what is all the electrics that have to be done before we go to the water? So we really want to bring here our batteries. We have 4 lithium batteries from Battleborn. We're going to install them right here under me, under this sofa. And once we have the batteries, we're going to install here all the equipment, which will be the solar controller, the MPPT, the Orion, and all the bungles and shunts and everything that belongs here. We don't need to have all the electric devices working, but we at least want to have the VHF radio. Ben, this is MP. Can you hear me? Some navigation light. All the things are mandatory and very important for our safety.
So do you remember I made this light out of a green bottle?
Lights, we already have installed many of them, and the rest can be done later.
Of course, we're going to have way more electrics in this boat. However, what this episode is for is so we can go over with you guys what we are planning on doing before launching, what are the necessities. So having a 12 volt alternator and a 24 volt alternator on the engine to charge our batteries. We'll have an inverter, and those are the necessities to be able to control our navigation lights, interior lighting, bilge pumps, and everything that is literally required for our boat to float safely. Our windlass has been installed already. That was the hardest part, I think. It's super heavy, it has to be placed right, it has to be strong. We've placed a couple of wires already. We will go over that in another episode to give you a good, clear idea of what we're doing, electrics and wiring wise. What is still missing on this anchor system? Of course, you can see there's no anchor, and the anchor rests on its support, which is also not there yet. We do have it inside the boat. That's everything on top of the deck. Under the deck, of course, from the anchor we will have the chain. We have the chain, galvanized steel chain, and that chain will run into a anchor chain box, which we also don't have yet, but I would like to build. I'm thinking about all the materials, but the place is there already. The structure is there for it, I just need to make the box. This shouldn't take very long, each of those individual jobs. However, I don't want to play around with this because the anchor system is super important and I want to make sure I do that right. I don't know about you, but I think I might have mentioned everything that will literally make the boat float. However, putting the boat in the water means we cannot work on anything under the waterline or close to the waterline, which involves the through holes. We want at least one inlet for the starboard head, one inlet for the port head toilet as well, and one inlet for the engine. Those are the three main inlets under the waterline. We also want the transducer, like anything that is speed related, depth sounder, sonar, or all in one. That would be very cool as well. We still need to get one of them as well, but that has to be done before launching because we will not have access under the waterline anymore. Other through holes that we would like to make before launching are the outlets for the two toilets, also the outlets for the 4 bilge pumps for now, and also the outlet for the 3 grey water boxes we have. One in the galley, one in each of the heads. Speaking of heads, it is not a must, but it would be very cool to have one of the toilets functioning when we launch, so don't depend on anything else other than our own ways of sitting or standing on or near a toilet. The reason we want 4 bilge pumps is we want to make sure no matter how the boat is angled, we will always be able to pump out water. There is one definite lowest place in the engine room, which means one big bilge pump pumping water out. So let's call the engine room chamber number 1. Let's call this whole area over here, including over to that bulkhead in the bedrooms, number 2. And the part number 3 is the bow locker. Bow locker also has one definite lowest point, which needs one bilge pump to pump a lot of water out. However, this area is so big that we want to have one bilge pump on this end if the boat is leaning backwards, so we can pump out water aft. However, if the boat is leaning slightly forwards, all the water will be collecting under this bed, which is why we also want a bilge pump over there. So that's 4 bilge pumps plus the through holes that we want to be able to at least pump water out when we're in the water.
I'm here by the sink. This is not something that is mandatory before we go to the water, but it would be ideal if we have at least one sink with water so we can be floating somewhere with the boat and wash our hands, brush our teeth while we're still finishing building the boat. What is missing for us to have this sink working? Well, we need to connect the water tanks to a pump that will bring water to the tap, and also once the water falls here, it needs to go to a grey water box and out the boat. So this at least is the most basic plumbing that I would like to have before we splash.
And the list can go on. We really tried to focus on specifically what needs to be done to get the boat launched.
We are aware that working on the water will be a lot more difficult than working on land, but we are ready to embrace that difficulty because we really want to go to the water. We feel that's also going to be good for the boat, so we are ready to take that step and we're excited for this new phase.
Loads of things we are building now. We don't know how to finish the job because we don't know how we want to live on the boat soon. Also, I want to just be able to jump into the water when I'm really, really hot.
Not just that, but many decisions will make so much more sense once we're living on the boat. Like now, is this shelf gonna be for mugs or for cereal boxes? Should it be taller or shorter? Because we're not living there, we don't know what we're gonna store where. And then sometimes we're just trying to imagine things that will just be easier once we're on the water. We really cannot wait to bring Yabá here to this bay and also to start sailing, but we know deep in our hearts that we're really gonna miss the shipyard days because it has been really a school. We learn so much every day, and also because the shipwrights have pretty much become our family right now.
Once the boat hits the water, of course the videos are going to continue. There is still so much to do on the boat, there is still so much to see in the world, and so much to explore.
If there's anything that you believe is important that we didn't mention, please let us know, because we're just focusing on the mandatory things, but maybe we forgot something. So,
one more question. Do you think we can get all of this done in the timeline that we set, in these 2 months?
Because it's not even 2 months, it could be 2 months, but we are going to the Annapolis Boat Show, and that's gonna kill at least 10 days of work for us. So it's 2 months minus those 10 days. It's a very tight timeline.
Is that a yay or a nay?
Let us know what you think.
Concerning the Annapolis Boat Show, if you guys are heading over there, we can give you a $5 discount by simply using 23 Yabá ABS. Also, we're going to have a patron meetup while we're there. If you're a patron, keep your eye out on the feed because we'll be giving more information about that very soon.
Also, we are participating in the Young Cruisers Awards in the category Refit of the Year. So if you think that our rebuild has been any kind of amusing to you, please take 5 seconds to vote for us on the link that we're gonna leave below. It's gonna mean the world to us if you do that. And you know what else means the world to us? When someone joins us on Patreon. So thank you so much, Lufa, David, Alan, Conrad, Alan, and Ken for joining our crew.
What also means the world to us is hitting that super thanks button on YouTube. Thank you so much, James, Dwayne, Douglas, Raphael,
James, Andrew, Herben, and Dwayne, and also Simon for leaving us a donation on PayPal. Everyone means the world to us, so thank you so much and see you all next week.
Let's go! Let's go running, we behaved so well!